This is the Smart Poker Study Podcast for players who are always striving to be better today than they were yesterday. Through strategy discussions, Q&As, and Poker Pro interviews, we'll dive deep into everything related to poker tactics, study techniques, and the mental side of the game. All in an effort to improve your skills, maximize your profits, and to make you a lifelong successful player. This podcast is brought to you by SmartPokerStudy.com, and I'm your host, Sky Matsuhashi. Poker people, make sure you listen to episode 2 where I showed you how to make smart poker goals and give you insights into how you can achieve them. Hey poker people, and happy Tuesday! Welcome to my first regularly scheduled podcast. So I'm dedicated to releasing a new podcast every Tuesday with a follow-up Q&A podcast every Friday, so you'll be hearing from me twice per week. The Tuesday podcasts are often poker strategy or poker study related, but today I've got something a little different. I'm going to discuss the most important book I've ever read, The One Thing, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, and how it's affected my life, and in more ways than just my poker career, of course. I've actually read this book twice now within the past year, and that's something I've never done before. But I got so much out of it the first time that I had to read it again just a couple months later. And now I'm planning on reading this again in 2016, maybe around June or so before I head off to the WSOP. So, as an overview for this episode, I'll start with a discussion about what leads some people to success. Then we'll talk about 5 humongous takeaways from The One Thing that can help us improve our lives. Then I'll end it with an awesome challenge that I hope you take me up on. Everything I discuss here will be in the show notes for this episode, which you can find and follow along at smartpokerstudy.com/3. Now here it is, today's podcast mission. At the end of this podcast, you'll understand why you need to focus on one thing at a time for ultimate success in poker and in life. And you'll have a question that you can ask yourself to guide your actions on a day-to-day basis for ultimate productivity. Alrighty, well, there once was a time when I thought the idea of self-help books and personal development was really just for losers. Why would I need to work on being better at life? Then I became a restaurant manager and learned that I was way underprepared. I turned to management books on tape and they revolutionized my work life. I became a much better manager and I even considered myself a leader within the restaurant. And so from that moment on, I was hooked on personal development. So over the years, I've worked to improve all different aspects of my life. My poker game, management skills, entrepreneurial knowledge, my physical health, and woodworking, just to name a few. But I never pursued any one area to the fullest. Sure, I was learning about a ton of things, but I never became great at any one of them. My life wasn't traveling in any one direction, but kind of meandering back and forth. Then I found the book called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. So this book teaches you how to get more out of the time you have to be more productive by focusing on the most important thing day by day. And that focus, that dedication will lead you to your goals very quickly. You'll achieve more in less time, feel less stressed, and you'll know that you are on the path to success. So one thing I learned from the book, one thing that I'd never thought of before, is that balance isn't something worth striving for. Trying to be good at too many things isn't a worthy pursuit. Let's think about people who are absolutely great at what they do. Like some of the greatest of all time. So like Michael Jordan, for example, he did nothing but play basketball hour after hour, spend time in the gym, while he was in high school and in college, and would stay on the courts longer than anybody else on the team, way after they went home. Eddie Van Halen, for example, playing alone for hours on end at home while his brother was off making mischief. Tiger Woods hitting thousands of balls every day while still in grade school. You have Warren Buffett, who does nothing but analyze companies day in and day out, and he still drives a beat-up old truck to and from work every day. My favorite author, Stephen King, he writes every single day, 4 more hours per day, no matter what, has a set schedule, locks himself in his office, and doesn't come out till his writing is done. And then my favorite burger joint, In-N-Out. I love their burgers. They are the best of all time, without a doubt. And that's all they do. Their menu consists of burgers, fries, sodas, and shakes. That's it. And they rock it. They kill it with their burgers. So what do all of these have in common? They have an uncommon dedication to one thing and striving for excellence within that one thing. So for the longest time, I was completely the opposite, flitting from one pursuit to another without much direction or dedication at all. But the one thing has helped me to find focus in my life. My pursuit right now, my one thing is becoming the best poker podcaster I can be. Everything I do, everything I consume, everything I write about is geared towards the podcast. When I study poker, I take notes on what I'm learning for a future podcast episode. When I've got time to listen to a podcast, it's a poker podcast or it's a podcast about podcasting. I'm taking notes on what I like from other podcasters, and articles I read are all about either poker or podcasting. So the one thing has helped me to find direction in my life, and there are 5 big takeaways from the book that I'd like to discuss. So the big takeaway number 1 is the 80-20 principle, which is a central focus of the book. It's kind of like the minimal effective dose that Tim Ferriss talks about so much. The principle states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. This is a provable, predictable certainty of nature, the book says. This means that we need to focus on a small number of things that will produce most of our results. We shouldn't be overly busy doing tons of things and focus on a to-do list with unimportant crap on it. We need to be focused on the things that will lead us to our goals and be productive doing just those things. Once we figure out what really matters to us, we need to keep asking what matters until there's only one thing left, and that's the one thing that we need to do. Not everything matters equally, and we need to say no to the unimportant things and say yes to the few things that will move the needle the furthest. So, as an example for poker players, let me ask you a question. What's the most important thing for players to learn before all other things? Besides the obvious logistics or rules of the game, like the flop is 3 cards and a flush beats a straight, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to being better than others at the table, what's the one thing we should all have down pat before studying anything else? So take a moment, pause the podcast, and answer this question for yourself. Do you have an answer? My own answer is that I think the most important thing is to have a range of hands you play from each position pre-flop and understanding how your range plays against those that would call or raise you. That's it. Opening ranges. That's the most important thing. The one thing we need to learn before all others. Everything that follows this, whether it's 3-betting pre-flop, avoiding tilt, c-betting the flop, bet sizing, player characteristics, or understanding player characteristics, table selection, understanding ICM, exploiting opponents, the win to showdown percentage, win rates, anything else at all, they are all influenced by the hands you choose to play. So this is the foundation that great poker players build upon. You can totally disagree, and that's fine. And actually, if you do, let me know. I'm always willing to entertain other ideas and to learn from others. If you think there's a more basic, fundamental thing that we need to learn, please let me know. I could totally change my whole outlook. So the second big takeaway is the domino effect. And this was a great part of the book, without a doubt. The domino effect states that a domino can knock over another domino that's 50% bigger than itself. Well, this has amazing implications for improving your poker game. You're not going to be able to topple that humongous domino of poker excellence, quote unquote, quickly or easily. But if you start with the small dominoes, work on building your game in small incremental steps, and choose specific topics that build upon each other, over time, you'll eventually get to the point where you can topple that huge mountain-sized domino that you're striving for. So in poker, after you topple that first domino of opening ranges, what's the next? I'd argue that it's understanding the math behind poker. The outs you have to hit a hand and the odds of hitting it, break-even percentages for bets and calls, equities and how a range of hands fares versus another range or versus a specific hand. So basically, it's understanding the numbers that drive profitable poker plays. The next domino is probably like 3-betting theory, then playing from the blinds, then c-betting and barreling, and on and on. There's always another domino to topple. We just need to set an order that makes sense and builds upon the last. So the third big takeaway is the lie of willpower always being on will call. So sometimes we don't realize lifelong truths until we frickin' read them in a book. Then it hits you like a Mack truck. That's what happened when I read the chapter on the lie of willpower being on will call. I never realized it, but each day our reservoir of willpower is refilled when we wake up, then slowly depletes as the day goes on. So that's why we often get so much done early in the day, then start to goof off or make bad decisions late in the day. The big lesson here is to do the one thing every day, nice and early, before anything else at all. So for myself as a poker player, I know that if I don't study in the morning, I probably won't study at all. Or if I do, it'll be half-assed study, like mindlessly watching a video or listening to a podcast without taking notes. So my first hour every single day when I wake up, before the kids wake up in the morning, I got to get them ready for school, is to spend 1 hour in study. This has led to a remarkable increase in my time spent hitting the books and a great improvement in my game. So I'm sharpening the saw daily, to borrow an old maxim. So the fourth big takeaway is the lie of discipline. Besides the lie of willpower, the book talks about truthiness and how many of the lies that we live our lives by are totally leading us astray. There are 6 lies in total, but the one I found the most applicable to myself is the lie that you can live a disciplined life. Living a quote-unquote disciplined life is nothing more than instilling habits in your life, and it takes an average of about 67 days or 70 days to firmly root a new habit in your life. Do you want to get healthy? Create a habit of daily exercise or cutting out white carbs like bread, rice, and potatoes, or sugars or alcohol for 67 or 70 days. Want to become a writer? Write for an hour a day for 70 days. Want to learn French? Commit to 1 hour a day for 70 days of studying your Rosetta Stone CDs. And of course, if you want to become a better poker player, dedicate 1 to 2 hours per day of studying for 70 days in a row, and tack on playing for 2 to 3 hours per day for those same 70 days in a row. So if you want quote-unquote discipline, build a habit, get work done, be productive, and it will look like discipline to the outside world. Alrighty, so the big takeaway number 5 is the focusing question. Now this is number 5 on my list right here that I'm giving you, but this is the most important part that I've taken away from this book, and I actually employ it daily. I'm employing it right now, as a matter of fact, so we'll get to it. So the first 4 takeaways that we mentioned are all part of this book's central tenet, which is the focusing question. Everything that we decide to do from moment to moment should be in answer to this question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? This is one simple question, if asked with a clear goal in mind, will lead us to the one thing that we need to do right now before all others. That one thing should make it easier or unnecessary to do the other things. It's the first step in a process of steps to achieve our goals and living a productive life. So to look at how I'm using the question to drive my life, I can get into how I came to be recording this podcast right now. It's 9 a.m. and I've got a list of things I want to accomplish today. And here's my list. I have it written down. Study 2 hours, record this podcast, take down the Christmas tree, mow the lawn, go on a bike ride with my family, play poker, and call a friend. I won't mention the friend's name, but, call a specific friend. Now, some of those things are quick and easy to do, and I know I can do them before doing this podcast, but I know my willpower will drain throughout the day, and this is the most important thing on the list, so I'm doing it before the others. Granted, I did study 1 hour already, but that's how I'm establishing study as a habit. So I moved right from that to doing this podcast. After this, I'll probably take down the Christmas tree because this would make my wife the happiest, and a happy wife's a happy life, as they say. So thank you, focusing question, for making my marriage happier. So to recap, the 5 big takeaways from this book. So the first big takeaway was the 80-20 principle. This states that 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts. So we need to find the smallest things that make the biggest impact. The big takeaway number 2 was the domino effect. You have to start with small dominoes, working on building your game in smart incremental steps, and choose specific topics that build upon each other over time. Big takeaway number 3 was the lie of willpower always being on will call. So the basic takeaway from this is get your stuff done early in the morning so you don't have to worry about not having the energy, not having the willpower later on to get it done. Big takeaway number 4 was the lie of discipline. So there is no such thing as living a disciplined life. It's simply instilling habits in your life. The more habits you have, the more disciplined you appear to the outside world. Big takeaway number 5 was the focusing question, and I'll say it once more. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Alrighty, and just to let you know, there is actually a One Thing YouTube channel. Now, the writers of the One Thing, Jay Papasan and Gary Keller, every month or so, they do a webinar with another influential person within some industry. It could be marketing, it could be exercise, whatever the case is. Well, they do a webinar and they post their webinars where they're applying the principles in the One Thing to whatever industry, whatever sector they're talking about. So check that out. You can find it in the show notes, a link to that YouTube channel in the show notes if you want to see various webinars relating the One Thing to other aspects of business or entrepreneurial life, that kind of stuff. Challenge! Here's my challenge to you for this episode. Each day over the next week, first thing in the morning, ask yourself the focusing question and get that one thing done ASAP. You'll feel so much better and more accomplished each day if you put this into practice. Once again, the focusing question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
Oh, that's it now. Get out there and be somebody. Go write a book.
Alrighty, to recap everything we just discussed, I shared with you how the One Thing has affected my life and how I'm using it to become a better poker player and a person, better podcaster, better blogger, all that stuff. I'm using it for everything. I talked about the 5 big takeaways, and I gave you the focusing question so you can use it to improve how you respond to each day. And I hope you decide to get your own copy of the One Thing and use it to transform your life. Well, that covers the One Thing and the incredible lessons I learned from the book. Please go to the show notes at smartpokerstudy.com/3 for links to everything mentioned here. And while you're there, sign up for the smartpokerstudy.com newsletter. And for doing that, I'll send you my Ultimate Poker Resource Guide for free. This guide will help you with the most important poker maths you need to know. You'll get poker range chromatics, flashcards to help you memorize important numbers, a system for you to follow for great poker success, and killer info on the most important HUD stats you need in order to exploit your opponents. So please send me your constructive feedback on this episode. Did I deliver on my mission as outlined in the beginning? Did I miss anything you think I should have discussed? Did I drop the ball entirely? Please visit the show notes page at smartpokerstudy.com/3 and leave a comment there. You can also send me an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com, tweet me at smartpokerstudy, or post your question in the Facebook group at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss. If you've got any questions for Friday's Q&A episode, please send them to me through all the channels just mentioned. Your question can be related to what we discussed today or anything else. If I use your question, I'll give you a shout out in the episode and you'll be famous for a day. Plus, if you've got an idea for a podcast topic you'd like me to discuss, I'd love to hear that as well. Alrighty, poker people, be sure to listen to the next episode, number 4, where I answer your questions. Please keep sending them in. If you enjoyed our time together and learned a little something, please share it with a friend. You can tweet out the link to the show notes, retweet my tweets, Facebook your friends about us, email our website address to your life partner, whatever. You know, I actually remember when Homer said he had to share something with his life partner. Then we cut to him sharing it with Mo at the tavern. And then Mo says, "Well, Homer, as your life partner, blah, blah, blah." I love The Simpsons, and that reminded me of that life partner. But word of mouth is the best advertising, and a recommendation from you to your friends would be most appreciated. Until next time, study smart, play hard, and make your next session the best one yet.